Welcome to the first session of our professional search engine optimization training. In this chapter, we will establish a holistic understanding of how search engines function and define the strategic framework for your ranking success. This content is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute professional business or marketing advice. Search engine algorithms are complex and constantly changing. Implementing these strategies does not guarantee specific ranking results. Always conduct your own research or consult with a qualified professional before making significant strategic business decisions. SEO is not merely a collection of isolated tactics or a game of tricking algorithms, but rather a disciplined approach to aligning your digital presence with the needs of both the search engine and the human user. Many developers and marketers fall into the trap of viewing optimization as a temporary project, ignoring the reality that search engines are constantly evolving, sophisticated systems that prioritize relevance and authority above all else. By understanding the core pillars of technical precision, content relevance, and domain authority, you position your website to capture sustainable, organic traffic that reliably translates into business growth. We are going to move beyond basic checklists and focus on the underlying mechanics of how Google processes information, from the initial crawl to the final ranking decision. Your commitment to these principles serves as the foundation for every technical adjustment and content strategy we will implement throughout this curriculum. Success in this field requires moving away from short-term hacks and instead adopting a mindset of continuous improvement that rewards high-quality, user-focused digital assets. To master the ranking landscape, one must first appreciate the shift from keyword density to thematic relevance and user signals. Algorithms today rely on complex mathematical models that interpret intent, meaning that the days of simple text matching are long behind us. We are looking at a system that evaluates a page based on its ability to satisfy a specific user query, which is a nuanced perspective that requires you to align your technical infrastructure with your content strategy. This integration is vital if you intend to compete in highly saturated markets where organic visibility is a hard-won commodity. Unlike paid media, where you stop receiving visibility the moment your budget runs dry, SEO acts as a compound interest mechanism for your business reach. By building a robust technical foundation and serving intent-driven content, you generate long-term equity that remains functional even as industry trends shift toward new engagement patterns. We will also establish the baseline metrics necessary to track your progress effectively and hold your efforts accountable to real business outcomes. It is tempting to look only at raw traffic numbers, but a professional approach requires deeper analysis into SERP visibility, click-through rates, and ultimately, conversion optimization. Without these sensors in place, you are essentially flying blind, unable to discern which aspects of your strategy are yielding returns and which are simply consuming your limited time and resources. As we proceed through these modules, we will prepare the necessary environment for deep analytical dives, ensuring that you can identify technical bottlenecks and evaluate domain health with confidence. We focus on the intersection of search engine requirements and user behavior, as this is where the most significant ranking improvements are archived. You will learn to recognize the difference between superficial vanity metrics and the performance indicators that actually signal health to search engine crawlers. Managing expectations is a critical part of this professional journey, particularly when considering the investment of time required for meaningful results. Strategic SEO is inherently a long-term play, requiring a systematic approach to technical troubleshooting, architecture deployment, and creative content execution. We will strip away the mystery surrounding core algorithm updates, replacing fear with predictability based on adherence to reliable principles. While the search landscape is indeed fluid, the fundamental goal of a search engine, delivering the most relevant and reliable information, is static and predictable. By adopting this rigorous framework, You'll be equipped to make informed decisions that improve your standing in the search results regardless of how the landscape changes in the future. We are building a workflow that allows for technical mastery and creative flexibility, ensuring that you remain competitive in an increasingly automated and intent-focused ecosystem. I look forward to our next interaction in the upcoming lecture. Welcome to the Foundations of User Intent, where we begin to decode the psychology behind every search query you target. In this chapter, we will learn why aligning your content with a user's underlying goal is the only sustainable path to ranking on page 1. When we talk about search intent, we are essentially talking about the missing link between simple keyword matching and actual ranking success. It is not enough to simply include the right words on a page anymore, because modern search engines prioritize the outcome the user expects over the mere presence of terms. We categorize these expectations into 4 distinct buckets to help us design content that satisfies the user immediately upon arrival. Informational intent represents queries where the user wants to learn something, such as how to fix a leaky faucet or understanding a specific concept. Navigational intent occurs when a user is searching for a specific brand or website, such as typing a company name into the search bar to find their login portal. Commercial investigation comes into play when a user is researching products but is not yet ready to commit to a purchase, often looking for comparisons or reviews. Finally, transactional intent signals that the user has their credit card ready and is looking for a checkout page or a specific product sales landing page. If you misalign your landing page with these intentions, you will almost certainly see high bounce rates and low conversion metrics. Google monitors these behavioral signals closely, and they view a rapid return to search results as a sign that your content failed to address the user's core problem. To diagnose the dominant intent for a given keyword, the most reliable laboratory is the search engine results page itself. By observing the layout of the results, you can infer exactly what Google deems the correct answer for that particular query. If you see largely educational articles, listicles, and definitions, you're looking at an informational query where a product page will likely fail to rank regardless of its technical optimization. Conversely, if the results are dominated by retailer sites and checkout buttons, the engine has clearly established that this term is commercial or transactional in nature. Sometimes, you will encounter multi-intent queries where the engine shows a mix of results because there is no clear consensus on what the user wants. In these specific cases, a hybrid approach is often your best strategy, such as creating a comprehensive guide that includes both educational content and internal links to relevant purchase pages. You must approach every page as a psychological contract where the user expects a specific type of experience according to their query. When you provide that experience, you signal relevance to the algorithm, which is a fundamental requirement for maintaining consistent ranking performance. One of the most effective ways to manifest this strategy within your content is by utilizing behavioral data to predict needs and influence funnel placement. You can look at the sequence of pages that leads to a conversion to understand how users move from informational searches into transactional decisions over time. By mapping specific page types to these intent stages, you effectively guide the user along a logical journey rather than forcing them into a sale too early. We also need to consider how to capture visibility through snippets and question-based optimizations. When you observe people also ask boxes in the results, you're seeing the direct expansion of a user's informational intent, providing you with a roadmap for exactly what headings you should use in your copy. By answering these sub-questions directly after your primary headers, you create a structured path that is highly likely to be extracted into a featured snippet. These snippets act as a direct shortcut to page 1, but they only occur when your content structure mirrors the concise and direct nature of the user's query. Remember that your primary objective is not just to attract traffic, but to terminate the user's quest for information within your own ecosystem. Consistent alignment of intent leads to higher dwell time, which remains a cornerstone of how successful sites maintain their dominant positions over long periods. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this lesson, we will move beyond basic keyword lists and examine the rigorous process of constructing a data-driven keyword universe. When we approach keyword research from an advanced perspective, we must first abandon the notion that volume is the primary metric for success. Seed keyword generation should be treated as an exercise in mapping the entire semantic field of an industry rather than merely harvesting high-level terms from a tool. We start by identifying the core entities that define the business and then utilize competitive gap analysis to determine where those entities overlap with the terms driving traffic to our rivals. By comparing our keyword footprint against domain competitors, we often find that the most valuable gaps are not necessarily the high-volume head terms, but rather the mid-tail terms where competitors lack specific intent-aligned content. A rigorous approach involves feeding a list of initial subject matter seeds into an API-driven tool to generate an exhaustive list of variations that reveal how users bridge the gap between their problem and a potential solution. This methodology ensures that our keyword data is always grounded in actual search behavior rather than our own internal naming conventions for products or services. Once we have our pool of data, we must critically evaluate these terms based on keyword difficulty and opportunity scores. Keyword difficulty, in its purest form, represents the backlink profile strength required to compete for a top 3 position, but it fails to account for content relevance or user intent. An opportunity score is a more nuanced metric that weighs search volume against the current rank of our own URLs and the historical difficulty trends of the competitors holding the top spots. If a term has high commercial intent but moderate difficulty, it represents a strategic opportunity to deploy high-quality content that satisfies the user better than the incumbent results. Conversely, ranking for high-volume terms that carry informational intent often provides little value if the traffic does not convert. We must also analyze search volume trends to account for seasonal fluctuations, as a term that seems highly valuable in July might be completely dormant in December. By mapping these trends, we can build a content calendar that captures traffic surges just as consumers begin their decision-making process. Building a robust keyword universe requires that we account for every stage of the customer journey, from awareness to transaction. At the top of the funnel, we focus on broad, educational content that captures users while they are still defining the problem they wish to solve. As we move down the funnel, our keyword associations should become more granular, moving toward product-specific comparisons and long-tail variants that signal a higher likelihood of purchase. Mapping these keywords to specific URLs is an essential step to prevent keyword cannibalization, which occurs when multiple pages on your site compete for the same ranking. When you have one URL optimized for an intent-specific keyword, you avoid the waste of having multiple pages split the authority and dilution of the signal sent to search engines. If a single page attempts to target too many disparate intent types, it often fails to rank for any of them because it lacks the sharp focus required by modern search algorithms. To broaden our topical reach, we should leverage semantic search patterns that focus on how concepts are laterally associated in language. Search engines no longer strictly match strings of text. They build knowledge graphs that connect concepts through entities and context. By identifying these auxiliary topics, we can capture secondary traffic that isn't directly captured by our primary seed keywords. For instance, if you're writing about a specific software tool, the semantic trail might include the challenges solved by that tool, the underlying technology used, and the industry best practices associated with its deployment. This is not about keyword stuffing, but about expanding the scope of our content to answer the questions that are contextually relevant to the user's original search query. By doing this effectively, we establish the site as an authority on a topic rather than just a destination for a specific phrase, which is a much more defensible position in the eyes of the algorithm. This thorough grounding in topical relevance is what eventually separates an optimized site from one that merely accumulates keywords without a coherent strategy or structural integrity. See you in the next lecture. Hello. This chapter explores how to move beyond isolated keywords to build comprehensive topical authority and align your site architecture with how modern search engines process meaning. In the past, search engine optimization was a game of targeting specific, independent keywords. Today, the algorithms are far more sophisticated, moving away from simple string matching toward understanding entities, relationships, and the overall context of subject. When we talk about topic clustering, we are essentially moving from a flat, fragmented content strategy to a structured, hierarchical model. This model, often referred to as the pillar and cluster framework, revolve around a central, high-level pillar page that provides a broad overview of a subject. Surrounding this are multiple supporting cluster pages that delve into specific subtopics, all linking back to the main pillar. By organizing your content in this way, you signal the search engines that your domain is not just mentioning a keyword, but acting as a comprehensive resource on a broader topic. It is a fundamental shift in perspective that prioritizes the user's need for a holistic answer rather than a single interaction with a query. The mechanics of this strategy rely heavily on semantic SEO and the concept of entities. An entity is a person, place, organization, or concept that is distinct and well-defined, and search engines like Google maintain massive knowledge graphs to understand the relationships between these entities. When you write content, you should not merely optimize for a primary keyword. Instead, you should cover the related entities and subtopics naturally within the text. This is often where latent semantic indexing or LSI keywords are referenced, but the core objective remains the use of natural language processing to demonstrate depth and topical relevance. If your pillar page covers photography, your supporting clusters should address entities like shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and specific camera brands. By explicitly linking these cluster pages back to the pillar page, you serve as a guide for both the user and the search engine crawlers. This specific pattern encourages the flow of link equity, which helps distribute the authority gathered by your high-quality content throughout the entire topic cluster. Creating these content silos is essentially an exercise in site architecture design, which directly impacts how effectively a crawler can traverse your content. When you group related articles together, you create a semantic footprint for your website that is much harder for competitors to replicate with individual, disconnected articles. Think of this as the difference between a library where books are thrown in a heap and a library where sections, subsections, and shelves are clearly labeled. Search engines are designed to prefer the latter because it reduces the cognitive load required to index and categorize your information. If you look at a successful e-commerce site, the best performing examples often use this silo structure to separate distinct categories, ensuring that a user searching for running shoes is not distracted by irrelevant links to mountain climbing gear. Each silo acts as a localized, authoritative structure, which can eventually rank for broad, high-volume search terms because the collective content within the silo supports the overarching pillar page. Transitioning toward this model requires a departure from legacy tactical approaches that focused exclusively on keyword density. Instead, you need to conduct a thorough audit of your subject matter to identify the main pillars and the various long-tail questions that support them. Consider a scenario where you're covering the topic of personal finance. Your pillar page might be a definitive guide to budgeting, while your clusters would address specific challenges like debt management, retirement planning, or emergency fund allocations. Each of these subtopics provides a fertile ground for specific long-tail keywords that might not warrant a full, independent article, but are crucial for demonstrating comprehensive expertise. By interlinking these topics, you form a robust web of content that satisfies user intent at different stages of their research journey. This architectural rigor is essentially the modern-day equivalent of domain authority optimization, as it confirms your site is a primary resource within your chosen niche. While the technical implementation of these silos is important, the primary goal remains to provide semantic value to the user. You're constructing a hierarchy of information that mirrors how a person would ideally learn about a complex topic from start to finish. When you maintain this focus, your internal linking strategy naturally becomes more effective because each link serves the purpose of guiding the reader to the next logical step in their investigation. You're not placing links for the sake of manipulating metrics, but to facilitate a seamless transition between concepts that are inherently linked in the real world. This alignment between user experience and algorithmic logic is the bedrock of modern SEO success. Remember that consistency in this structure is key, as it provides clear cues for search engine algorithms to categorize your pages accurately. When the search engine understands your site's hierarchy, it can better reward your pages with visibility for the topics you are genuinely striving to master. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this session, we will examine the tactical methodology for identifying and exploiting the keyword gaps that exist between your domain and your direct competitors. To understand the competitive landscape, we must start by acknowledging that search engines provide a relative playing field rather than an absolute one. When we perform a gap analysis, we are effectively reverse engineering the visibility of other market participants to uncover keywords where they perform exceptionally well, but your site remains invisible. This is not about mimicry or simply copying their strategy, but rather identifying specific informational needs that your competitors are satisfying for users while you're currently failing to offer a point of entry. By utilizing specialized overlap analysis tools, you can input your domain alongside a set of top-ranking competitors to generate a Venn diagram of keyword rankings. This data allows you to isolate the intersecting queries that all your rivals rank for, yet where your domain is notably absent from the search engine results pages. You're looking for the low-hanging fruit where the subject matter aligns with your domain authority and niche expertise, providing an immediate opportunity to capture traffic that is currently being ceded to others. Once you have identified these missing opportunities, the next logical step is to critique the actual content supporting those rankings. It is rarely sufficient to simply write a new page on a target keyword. You must evaluate why the incumbent content is successfully holding that position. Look closely at the depth, the structure, and the overall quality of their landing pages to determine what information they are providing that you are not. Perhaps they are incorporating original research, comprehensive data visualizations, or a more intuitive user experience that keeps the visitor engaged for longer durations. You must determine if their authority is derived primarily from the breadth of their content or from a superior backlink profile that signals relevance to the search algorithm. By assessing their backlinks on a keyword-specific basis, you can ascertain whether you need to simply produce better written content or if you also require a focused link building campaign to earn the necessary authority to compete for that specific phrase. This evaluation process should also extend to identifying which content types consistently perform best within your particular industry niche. In some sectors, comprehensive long-form technical guides are the standard, while in others, interactive tools, calculators, or simplified listicles dominate the top spots. If you observe that your primary competitors are monopolizing the first page with a specific format, it suggests that the search intent for that query is heavily tied to how the information is delivered. Your goal is not to merely replicate their success, but to identify their weaknesses and leverage your own unique value propositions that the current market leaders are neglecting. Perhaps their content is outdated, overly complex, or fails to address the nuances that your specific audience cares about, leaving a clear opening for you to provide a superior, more relevant alternative. The culmination of this analysis should be the development of a strategic roadmap that prioritizes these gaps according to their potential impact on your business objectives. You want to focus your resources on keywords that offer high-intent traffic while simultaneously ensuring that you're not overextending your efforts on terms where the competitive barrier to entry is disproportionately high. It is professional practice to document these findings in a structured manner, noting the content type you intend to create and the metrics you will use to measure progress. By systematically closing these gaps, you transform your SEO strategy from a passive exercise in keyword stuffing into a proactive program of market capture. You are building a content ecosystem that is more comprehensive and better aligned with searcher intent than anything your rivals currently offer, which naturally leads to better rankings and more sustained organic growth over time. See you in the next lecture. Welcome to our session on long-tail keyword optimization. We will examine how these specific low-competition phrases serve as the backbone of a sustainable traffic strategy. In the world of search engine optimization, we often feel a natural pull toward high-volume head terms because they appear to hold the most promise for visibility. However, attempting to rank for broad, competitive phrases like running shoes as a new entity is often an exercise in futility. Instead, we should look toward the long tail, which consists of highly specific search queries that are typically longer and hold significant intent. The 80-20 rule of search suggests that while head terms capture a massive portion of the broad interest, the vast majority of search volume across the web is actually buried in these long-tail queries. By targeting these smaller, less competitive phrases, you can generate a steady stream of traffic that is often much closer to the point of conversion. A user searching for best men's lightweight waterproof running shoes for trail racing has a much clearer intent than someone simply searching for shoes, and they're statistically more likely to perform a desired action once they land on your page. Optimizing for these queries requires a shift in how we structure and present our content. We are effectively moving away from the static, keyword stuff pages of the past toward a model that prioritizes conversational and voice-based queries. Because modern search engines utilize natural language processing, they're increasingly capable of understanding the nuances of human speech. When a user asks a smart speaker or mobile assistant a complex question, they use natural language rather than the fragmented phrases we once typed into search bars. Consequently, your content should strive to answer these specific, complex questions in a way that feels natural to a human reader. If you can provide a direct, concise, and valuable answer within the body copy of an article, you increase your chances of being featured for those specific conversational queries. There is a distinct advantage to building your site authority through the strategic application of these phrases before attempting to challenge high-difficulty head terms. Think of it as a logical progression where you establish topical relevance and trust by comprehensively covering a subject matter through various long-tail angles. Once a search engine recognizes your domain as a reliable source for a cluster of specific questions, your overall authority begins to increase. This foundational growth makes it far easier to eventually pivot toward broader, more competitive topics because you have already cultivated a baseline of relevance and performance. You are effectively building an ecosystem of content that links related inquiries, which signals to the algorithm that your site is a deep resource rather than a superficial landing page. When it comes to the technical implementation of these phrases, subtlety is your greatest asset. You should aim to integrate long-tail keywords naturally within your body copy and strategically place them in header tags or dedicated FAQ sections. A well-constructed FAQ section is particularly effective for capturing diverse search entry points because it allows you to address multiple specific, long-tail questions on a single page without disrupting the primary narrative of your content. Always ensure that the inclusion of such phrases adds value to the reader rather than simply checking a box for the algorithm. If an entire sentence exists solely to house a keyword, you have likely prioritized the wrong objective, as modern search engines are adept at identifying and discounting manipulative text. Your goal is to be the most helpful resource for a user's specific query, and if you succeed in that, the rankings usually follow. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. Let us now examine how we quantify the actual business impact of the keywords we have identified. In this chapter, we will learn how to move beyond mere search volume and translate keyword performance into tangible financial outcomes. We will cover the mechanics of calculating return on investment by integrating conversion data, cost per click benchmarks, and search trends into a unified decision-making framework. When we approach the evaluation of keyword value, the first step is to demystify the relationship between raw search volume and actual traffic potential. High search volume is a vanity metric if the conversion rate at the landing page level is negligible or if the traffic consists of users who are not in a position to transact. To calculate a projected revenue value, you must take the estimated monthly traffic for a keyword, multiply it by your site's historical conversion rate, and finally multiply that result by your average order value or lifetime customer value. For example, if a term receives 1,000 monthly visits and converts at 2%, that yields 20 conversions. If your average profit per conversion is $50, the localized value of that keyword is $1,000 per month. By comparing this figure against the cost of creating the content and ranking for that term, you establish a clear return on investment benchmark that informs your resource allocation. Prioritizing keywords requires a pragmatic assessment of both business goals and your current operational constraints. Not every high-value keyword is immediately accessible, especially if the current search engine results page is dominated by massive incumbents with significantly higher domain authority. You must categorize your prospects into quick wins, which are low-difficulty terms with clear intent, and long-term bets, which are high-volume, highly competitive terms. This creates a staggered roadmap that allows you to demonstrate progress early while building momentum for larger objectives. Resource availability is the limiting factor here. If you can only produce 4 high-quality content pieces per month, you should prioritize them for keywords that balance search volume with a higher probability of conversion based on intent. Analyzing commercial intent is arguably the most critical component of this evaluation process, as it distinguishes between informational hunters and transactional buyers. A user searching for how to repair a faucet is seeking knowledge, while a user searching for best kitchen faucet for high pressure is actively investigating a product purchase. To ensure that your traffic translates into revenue, you must align the content type directly with the underlying intent of the search query. By mapping keywords to the stages of a marketing funnel, you can ensure that your landing pages are framed correctly to move the user toward the next logical step in the sales cycle. If you target a highly competitive transactional keyword with purely educational content, you will encounter high exit rates because the user is unable to find the product information or call to action they require. Effective SEO is not a static endeavor, but an iterative process of monitoring keyword movement and correlating shifts with your tactical interventions. When you see a keyword rise from position 15 to position 5, you must be able to trace that movement back to specific optimizations, such as meta tag refinements, internal link updates, or content expansions. If you possess this granular visibility, it becomes much easier to scale the techniques that are proving effective across other clusters. Conversely, if you observe a sudden drop in rankings, you must look for correlations with search algorithm updates or changes in the competitive landscape. Maintaining a consistent log of when changes were implemented allows you to maintain scientific integrity in your approach, preventing you from assuming that correlation implies causation in every instance. The market environment is rarely stable, which necessitates a regular, periodic audit of your keyword list to account for evolving consumer behaviors. Trends that were highly relevant 6 months ago may have diminished in importance, while new search queries may emerge that capture current market sentiments or technological shifts. This process of pruning and refreshing keeps your content strategy lean and ensures that you are not wasting development resources or crawl budget on terms that no longer deliver high-intent traffic. By auditing your keyword sets on a quarterly basis, you can pivot your strategy before your competitors even notice the change in the search landscape. This responsiveness reinforces your site's authority as a platform that provides up-to-date, relevant solutions for its user base. Finally, You must synthesize these performance metrics into a format that stakeholders can readily understand and trust through data visualization. A raw spreadsheet of keyword rankings rarely conveys the strategic value of your work, whereas a dashboard showing correlated revenue lifts is far more persuasive. Use charts that display your keyword position improvements alongside traffic growth and conversion data to build accountability and demonstrate how search engine visibility acts as a reliable revenue driver. When presenting to stakeholders, focus on the upward trend lines of business-critical keywords rather than the daily fluctuations of long-tail terms. Providing this clear, visual narrative ensures that you retain support and funding for your SEO efforts in the long term, as you're speaking the language of business objectives rather than just technical performance targets. I will see you in the next session. Welcome back to our technical journey through the architectural components of your web pages. In this session, we will focus on the precision engineering required for on-page metadata and structural tagging. The title tag represents the primary touchpoint between your content and the user navigating the search engine results page. When you draft these, remember that you are balancing two distinct masters, the search engine algorithm and the human click intent. Algorithmically, it is imperative to place your primary keyword as close to the beginning of the title as possible, as this serves as a clear signal of semantic relevance. However, readability must not suffer for the sake of keyword density, as CTR is a massive implicit ranking factor. We operate under a practical constraint of approximately 60 characters to ensure your message does not truncate on standard displays. You should treat the title as a headline of a physical newspaper, where every character must convey value or stimulate curiosity. If the title simply lists keywords, users will perceive it as spam, but a well-constructed title informs while enticing a click. Ultimately, your goal is to be both the most relevant result and the most attractive one on the page. Moving beyond the title, the meta description functions as your secondary sales copy within the SERP ecosystem. While these descriptions do not serve as direct ranking factors in the sense of keyword injection, they're critical for influencing the click-through rate. Think of the description as a justification for the user's spent time. You have roughly 150 to 160 characters to address the user's intent directly. It is often wise to incorporate a call to action or a clear value proposition that explains exactly what the visitor will encounter upon clicking. If you fail to write a custom meta description, search engines will generate one based on your page content, which often leads to disjointed or cut-off fragments. Consistent application of this practice across your site ensures that your brand voice remains uniform across thousands of potential entry points. By being precise, you minimize the risk the user bypasses your result for a competitor with more compelling messaging. Structural hierarchy through header tags, specifically the H1 to H6 elements, provides the logical skeleton for your page content. You should treat the H1 tag as the primary heading of the document, typically visible to the user, but logically separated from the title tag. Each subsequent heading, from H2 down to H6, should represent a sensible nesting of information, much like the outline of a technical document. Search engines use these tags to understand the topical focus and the relationship between different sections of your text. Avoid the temptation to style page elements as headers simply because they look large in your CSS. Semantically, they should only be used to organize content. A logical hierarchy allows web crawlers to map the document flow more efficiently, which correlates with better interpretation of your content's depth. When a user or a bot scans your page, the headers provide the map necessary to navigate your arguments without getting lost in the prose. Technical precision further extends to the management of canonical tags and social metadata, which often represent overlooked vectors of authority. The canonical tag serves as a declaration to search engines, explicitly stating which URL is the master version when multiple paths lead to essentially identical content. This prevents the fragmentation of your ranking signals, often called duplicate content issues, that occurs when similar URLs compete for the same keyword profile. Simultaneously, Open Graph or OG tags are the standard protocol for controlling how your content appears when shared via social channels. By explicitly defining the image, title, and description served to platforms like Facebook or LinkedIn, you transform an ugly, auto-generated preview into a curated marketing asset. These tags occupy the head of your document, acting as instructions for the software that interacts with your pages, entirely separate from the user-facing content. Failing to configure these means leaving the visual representation of your brand to the whims of automated social scrapers. Finally, you must reconcile these requirements by testing and continuously auditing your implementation across different viewports. What renders perfectly on a desktop machine may become a cluttered mess on a mobile device, particularly where pixel counts and character wrapping are concerned. Mobile-first indexing forces search engines to look at the version of the site being served to handheld devices, meaning your titles and descriptions must remain coherent even when constrained by smaller screens. You should regularly review your SERP presence to ensure that your carefully crafted tags are not being rewritten or truncated in ways that distort your brand identity. Optimization is not a static task. It is an iterative process of observing performance data and refining the language you use to attract visitors. By auditing these elements, you ensure that every page on your domain is technically sound, semantically clear, and optimized for engagement. I will see you in the next lecture. Hello, and welcome back to our discussion on search engine optimization. In this lesson, we will focus on the fundamental role that content quality plays in determining your ranking position. When we talk about quality in the context of modern search, we are primarily referring to Google's EAT framework, which stand for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Experience relates to whether the content creator has firsthand knowledge of the subject matter, such as someone who has actually used a software product rather than just reading about its features. Expertise is demonstrated by the factual accuracy, depth, and professional insight provided within your articles, making it essential to cite verified sources or professional biographies. Authoritativeness is measured by your site's reputation within the niche and how often other reputable outlets reference your content. Finally, trustworthiness is the most critical element, as it depends on whether your site provides a safe and reliable environment for users, including transparent contact information and a clear privacy policy. By consistently aligning your content with these four pillars, you significantly lower the chance of being flagged by automated quality algorithms. Establishing expertise effectively often necessitates the creation of comprehensive, long-form content that provides exhaustive answers to user queries. While short-form content can satisfy some informational searches, search engines favor pages that resolve a user's intent entirely without requiring them to click back to the search results page. A piece that covers a topic from multiple angles acts as a definitive resource, which naturally attracts more backlinks and increases your overall domain authority over time. However, depth should never be confused with word count, as adding unnecessary fluff to reach an arbitrary length target will negatively impact your engagement metrics. If your readers leave the page because they find the content tedious or repetitive, Google will interpret this as a signal that the content serves no purpose, leading to a drop in rankings. Readability and visual hierarchy are technical aspects of content design that heavily influence how long a visitor stays on your page. When users land on your site, they typically scan the text to determine relevance before committing to reading, meaning they look for clear headings, logical subcategories, and concise sentence structures. You should ensure that your visual hierarchy guides the reader's eye naturally down the page, utilizing headings to delineate sections that are easy to digest in a mobile environment. Integrating multimedia, such as diagrams, screenshots, or videos can drastically improve dwell time by providing alternative ways to consume your content. A wall of text is generally perceived as intimidating or outdated, whereas a well-structured page with balanced spacing encourages passive consumption of complex ideas. The concept of thin content remains a significant threat to your site-wide quality scores and should be eliminated during your regular maintenance cycles. Thin content refers to pages that offer very little value to the user, perhaps because they were generated automatically or simply address a topic with too little actual information. If a crawl shows that a large proportion of your site consists of pages with high bounce rates and low time on page, the search engine might devalue your entire domain. You should audit your existing content library at least biannually to verify factual accuracy and ensure that internal references remain current. Updating old articles with fresh data is often more effective than creating new pages, as it leverages the historical ranking authority of the existing URL to maintain a competitive position. To cater to mobile users, you must be intentional about how your information is structured on the page. Mobile screens are narrow, which means long paragraphs are often difficult to read or even painful for the eyes to track across the display. Breaking up your text with shorter paragraphs allows the eye to rest and prevents the user from feeling overwhelmed by large blocks of text. While you should avoid overusing lists, they're excellent for breaking down steps or comparing features where technical brevity is preferred over long-form prose. By maintaining a clean layout, you reduce the frustration that often leads to high exit rates, ensuring that your EAT efforts are supported by a seamless user experience. I will see you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this lecture, we examine internal linking as a coherent structural strategy rather than a series of arbitrary hyperlinks. If you consider your website as a directed graph, the internal links represent the edges that define how information flows through your domain. Search engine crawlers rely on these paths to discover new content and, more importantly, to understand the relative importance of your pages. When you link from a high-authority page, such as your home page, to a subpage, you are essentially passing a portion of that page's ranking power, often colloquially referred to as link equity or page rank. A logical architecture ensures that this equity is not trapped in dead ends, but is distributed to the pages that contribute most significantly to your business goals. By flattening your site structure, you ensure that critical content is never more than 3 clicks away from the homepage, which minimizes the effort required for both users and spiders to reach your most valuable assets. Think of this as creating a well-lit highway system rather than a labyrinth of obscure side streets that lead nowhere. The anchor text you select for these links serves a dual purpose as both a navigational guide for the user and a contextual signal for the search engine algorithm. When you use descriptive, keyword-rich phrases instead of generic calls to action like click here, you provide the crawler with an immediate understanding of the target page's content. This descriptive anchor text acts as a label, telling the search engine what a user might expect to find upon arriving at the destination. However, you must avoid the trap of aggressive, exact match links across your entire site, as this can trigger over-optimization penalties. Instead, aim for a natural distribution that uses varied yet relevant terms, which reinforces the thematic consistency between the source and target pages. When the context of the linking page strongly aligns with the topic of the link page, you build a semantic bond that search engines find highly trustworthy. One of the most effective ways to establish a clear hierarchy while simultaneously improving user experience is the implementation of breadcrumb navigation. Breadcrumbs provide a trail of where a visitor is within your domain, and they serve as an explicit map for search engine bots to understand the parent-child relationship of your content. By reflecting your URL structure in these navigation elements, you strengthen the site's logical design and assist crawlers in identifying category pages versus individual articles. Beyond simple navigation, you must treat your link auditing process as a preventative maintenance task to identify broken links and orphan pages. Orphan pages are those that exist on your server but have no internal links pointing to them, effectively making them invisible to internal crawl paths and wasting your crawl budget. Locating and resolving these issues involves systematically mapping your site to ensure that every necessary page is integrated into the web of your internal structure. Maintaining a balance in link density is essential because, while internal links are vital, overloading a single page with excessive links dilutes the authority passed to each individual destination. Each link on a page consumes a fraction of the total link equity, meaning that a page with 200 links provides significantly less value to each target than a page with only 5. You should prioritize your most influential pages for inclusion in headers, footers, or primary body content, while pushing less critical links to sidebar areas or secondary lists. The goal is not to maximize the number of links, but to optimize the quality and relevance of the connections you do create. When you treat your internal linking strategy as a form of architectural planning, you align your technical setup with the long-term goal of ranking success. Regularly reviewing these connections will reveal whether your structure still supports your current content hierarchy or if it has drifted away from your strategic intent. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back to our exploration of on-page optimization, where today we focus specifically on image optimization strategies. We will examine how visual assets influence search indexing, performance metrics, and overall accessibility. Digital assets are often treated as an afterthought in SEO strategies, yet they serve as critical signals for search engines. When you include images on a page, you are not merely decorating text. You're providing contextual data that search algorithms must parse. To assist these crawlers, the most fundamental step involves using descriptive file names. A file named img_001.jpg provides zero semantic value, whereas a name like blue-running-shoe-side-view.jpg explicitly informs the engine about the image content. This practice establishes a baseline of relevance before the crawler even analyzes the pixel data itself. Such naming conventions provide a necessary structure that supports your broader keyword strategy without requiring additional technical overhead. By consistently applying this habit, you ensure that even without rendering, the search engine grasps the subject matter of your visual content. Accessibility and search indexing intersect through the use of alt text, which is an indispensable attribute for modern web standards. Alt text provides a textual alternative to visual content, ensuring that screen readers can convey the image's purpose to users with visual impairments. From an SEO perspective, this is how Google understands what an image represents and how it relates to the surrounding content. When composing alt text, avoid stuffing keywords. Instead, describe what is happening in the image as clearly as possible. If an image is purely decorative, it is often better to use an empty alt attribute to allow assistive technology to skip over it. This precision helps search engines index your media for relevant visual search queries, such as those initiated through Google Lens. Integrating this metadata bridges the gap between purely visual information and machine-readable data. Modern web performance hinges on the balance between high visual fidelity and file size, as heavy images are the primary cause of slow loading times. When an image takes too long to load, your core web vitals metrics, like largest contentful paint, will inevitably suffer. To mitigate this, you should adopt modern file formats, such as WebP, which offer significantly better compression than traditional JPEG or PNG files without sacrificing quality. Furthermore, you should never serve an image that is larger than the container width defined in your CSS. Responsive image scaling ensures that a mobile user on a narrow screen does not download a desktop-size high-resolution asset designed for a widescreen monitor. Utilizing the Circset attribute allows the browser to select the most appropriate version of the file based on the client's viewport. While compression and proper formatting improve speed, you must also consider how the browser prioritizes network resources. Lazy loading is a technique that defers the loading of off-screen images until the user scrolls near them, ensuring that critical above-the-fold content loads first. Browsers now support native lazy loading, which can be implemented simply by adding a loading attribute to your image tags. This optimization prevents non-essential images from competing for bandwidth when the page first initializes. Beyond this, ensure that your images include proper source set definitions and explicitly defined width and height attributes to prevent layout shifts. Cumulative layout shift is a negative ranking factor that occurs when images load and push existing content down the page. By reserving the necessary space for images before they render, you maintain a stable and predictable user experience. Metadata and captions offer an additional layer of context that search engines often use to populate featured snippets and rich results. While file names and alt text serve as primary indicators, captions underneath images provide immediate context that search crawlers frequently correlate with the surrounding text. Ensuring that your images are part of a semantic, accessible, and high-performance framework is essential for modern ranking. These visual signals increasingly factor into competitive areas where search intent requires a mix of text and imagery to satisfy the user's query. Remember that search engines are not merely looking at your keywords, but at the total quality and accessibility of all components on your page. Consistent application of these technical standards ensures your visual media contributes positively to your overall page rank. I will see you in the next lecture. Welcome back. Today, we are going to look at the architectural foundation of your pages as represented by their URLs. A clean URL structure serves two primary masters, the search engine crawler and the human user. From a technical standpoint, a URL acts as the address for a specific resource, and when that address is descriptive, it provides immediate context to both agents. You want your paths to reflect the actual hierarchy of your site, effectively acting as breadcrumbs that indicate where a user sits within your information architecture. For example, a structure like site.com/category/product-name is inherently superior to a cryptic sequence like site.com/p=123%ref=x99. This descriptive approach allows search engines to better categorize your content based on the keywords included in the path itself. By embedding relevant keywords directly into the URL, you reinforce the topic of the page before the crawler even processes the content body. Maintaining this consistency ensures that the user understands precisely what they are clicking on when they encounter your link in a search engine result page. One of the most persistent issues in site architecture is the inclusion of unnecessary technical baggage within the URL string. You should aggressively avoid session IDs, query parameters that do not serve distinct content, and complex dynamic characters that complicate the crawling process. When a URL becomes cluttered with meaningless symbols, it creates a risk of duplicate content issues if the server treats multiple versions of the same page as different resources. Regarding formatting, the industry's standard for readability is the use of hyphens as word separators. Avoid underscores or camel case, as browsers and search engines have historically preferred hyphens to delineate separate concepts cleanly. Furthermore, keeping your URL short and memorable is an essential aspect of user experience design. A concise URL is easier to copy, paste, and share across social media platforms without breaking, which indirectly supports your organic footprint by encouraging natural link sharing. As your site grows, the temptation to create numerous subdomains often arises, but a logical subfolder structure is almost always the more effective choice for SEO. Subdomains are technically treated as separate entities by search engines, which can dilute the authority accumulated across your domain. In contrast, subfolders accumulate authority within the main domain, allowing your site to benefit collectively from the ranking power of every page. If you must restructure your pages, you cannot simply move content without accounting for the previous locations. This is where the strategic implementation of 301 redirects becomes vital. A 301 redirect is a permanent move that preserves link equity, signaling to search engines that the content has moved to a new destination. You should rely on 300 ones to manage migrations or URL updates, whereas 302 redirects should be reserved solely for temporary changes, as they do not pass the same level of ranking value. Finally, your URL structure must align seamlessly with your breadcrumb trails. When the visual representation of your site structure, the breadcrumbs, perfectly mirrors the actual file path of a URL, you create a cognitive consistency that users appreciate. This structural alignment serves as an internal signal of quality and organization, which is a subtle but pervasive ranking factor. If your breadcrumbs indicate that a shoe is in the category of footwear, the URL should logically confirm this through its naming convention. By strictly adhering to these principles of descriptive paths, technical cleanliness, and logical hierarchies, you build an SEO-friendly site that is easier to index and more intuitive for your audience. Always remember that a well-structured URL is not just an address, but a clear, descriptive statement about the value provided by the underlying page. I look forward to discussing the next topic with you. Welcome to our discussion on enhancing user experience signals, where we explore how behavioral metrics directly influence your search engine visibility. We will focus on how technical performance and interaction design coalesce into a ranking signal that search engines interpret as a measure of quality. When we discuss user experience in the context of SEO, we must address the reality that search engines are increasingly acting as proxies for human satisfaction. The core Web Vitals framework, consisting of largest contentful paint, first input delay, and cumulative layout shift, serves as an objective benchmark for this satisfaction. Largest contentful paint measures the time it takes for the main content of a page to render, which is a critical moment for user perception of performance. First input delay, or its more modern successor interaction to Next Paint, quantifies the responsiveness of your site by measuring how quickly the browser executes an action after a user initiates an interaction. Cumulative layout shift monitors visual stability, ensuring that elements do not shift unexpectedly as the page loads, which often leads to poor user frustration and accidental clicks. By optimizing these technical metrics, you provide a stable foundation that allows users to engage with your content without technical friction or unnecessary delay. Page load speed is not merely a vanity metric for developers. It is a fundamental driver of bounce rates across all device categories. When a page fails to load within a reasonable window, typically under 3 seconds, the probability of a user abandoning the session increases significantly. Search engines track these abandonment patterns, using them as a signal that the destination page may not be providing the value promised in the search results. To combat this, you should audit your resource loading strategies, ensuring that critical CSS is prioritized and that non-essential scripts are deferred or loaded asynchronously. Mobile friendliness is equally paramount, necessitated by the reality that the index itself is now mobile-first in nature. This requires more than just scaling content. It demands careful attention to touch target optimization, ensuring that buttons and interactive elements are sized and spaced to be usable on smaller, touchscreen devices without frustration. Beyond raw speed, we must analyze the user behavior flow to identify friction points that derail the conversion path. By utilizing tools that visualize user paths, you can pinpoint specific locations where visitors drop off, often indicating that the navigation architecture is unintuitive or the intended call to action is obscured. Security serves as a crucial trust signal, which is why the implementation of HTTPS is mandatory for any serious professional site. Beyond the technical requirement for encryption, secure connections foster confidence, which in turn improves time on page and reduces the likelihood that a user will navigate away immediately due to browser security warnings. Crafting an intuitive navigation involves minimizing the number of clicks required to reach core content, while clear calls to action must be positioned strategically to guide the user naturally through the content hierarchy. Engagement metrics, such as time on page and interaction rate, are often interpreted by search algorithms as indicators of content relevance. If users land on your page and immediately return to the search results, this pogo sticking behavior is a strong signal that your content does not meet the user's search intent or that the landing experience is deficient. When you monitor these metrics, you are effectively performing a secondary quality check on your content strategy. A high interaction rate suggests that the content is sufficiently engaging to pull the user into a deeper state of consumption. To improve these signals, your pages should provide immediate value while steering the visitor toward related resources or further actions that maintain the momentum of the session. Remember that these signals are additive, meaning that small improvements across a large number of pages will compound into a significant improvement in your overall site health and ranking potential. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this lecture, we will explore the mechanisms behind crawl budget management and why technical efficiency is a prerequisite for high-ranking performance. Search engines allocate a finite amount of resources to crawl your website, a concept commonly referred to as crawl budget. If your site is vast or contains significant technical debt, search engine bots may fail to index your most important content because they spend too much time navigating redundant paths. The robots.txt file acts as your primary directive for managing this behavior, allowing you to explicitly instruct crawlers to avoid directories that offer no utility, such as administrative dashboards, filtered search results, or development folders. By tightening these access controls, you effectively preserve the bot's time for high-value priority pages. It is important to remember that robots.txt is a recommendation rather than an absolute restriction, so you must combine it with noindex tags where you want to strictly prevent content from appearing in search results. Think of your crawl budget as a limited set of tokens that must be spent strategically to ensure the most relevant content undergoes indexing first. Your XML sitemap serves as a critical roadmap for crawlers, yet many practitioners overlook the necessity of keeping it lean and current. A bloated sitemap containing outdated URLs or redirecting pages forces the bot to perform unnecessary calculations, thereby wasting energy that could be spent elsewhere. You should ensure that only canonical, indexable URLs are included in your sitemap, as this provides a direct, high-signal feed to the search engine. Alongside this, managing redirect chains and loops is essential because every extra hop consumes time and adds latency to the indexing process. A redirect chain occurs when a URL moves from point A to point B to point C, which increases the likelihood of a bot timing out before it reaches the final destination. By auditing your server logs and streamlining these paths, you minimize the overhead for both the crawling infrastructure and the server itself. Identifying and resolving technical friction points is best facilitated through Google Search Console. You should monitor the crawl statistics report regularly to observe patterns in how bots interact with your server, paying close attention to time to first byte, or TTFB. High server response times can cause crawlers to throttle their requests or abandon the crawl entirely, as they prefer sites that respond quickly and reliably. If your site utilizes features like infinite scroll or dynamic pagination, you must ensure that these are implemented with appropriate navigational structures. Without correct implementation, crawlers may struggle to discover the content hidden behind load more buttons or complex query parameters, essentially rendering those pages invisible to the search index. These technical details are often the difference between a site that reaches the top positions and one that struggles to gain any meaningful traction at all. Effective implementation of nofollow and noindex tags allows you to surgically control which parts of your architecture are exposed to public search. You should apply these tags specifically to pages that serve utilitarian functions but provide no value for organic discovery, such as privacy policies, internal account settings, or duplicate content instances. Using these directives appropriately prevents the dilution of your crawl budget, as it signals to the search engine that these pages are not candidates for indexation. Furthermore, you must verify that your internal linking structure supports this intent by ensuring that your most critical pages are reachable via clean, accessible paths. When you combine these granular controls with a fast, responsive server environment, you create an optimized pipeline for content discovery. Consistency in this area ensures that when you publish new material, it is prioritized by the search engine with minimal delay. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. Today we will examine how structured data provides search engines with the context necessary to interpret your content accurately. Search engines operate primarily on algorithms that process vast amounts of unstructured text. While crawlers have become sophisticated, they do not inherently understand the difference between a person's name, a product price, or the geographical coordinates of a business. Structured data, specifically implemented via schema markup, acts as a bridge between human-readable content and machine-understandable data. By using a standardized vocabulary like schema.org, you explicitly label your content entities. This allows Google to identify your article as a piece of journalism or your web page as a product listing. Providing this semantic layer is not just about helping machines. It is about guaranteeing that the right features appear in the search results. When you reduce the ambiguity of your content, you make it significantly easier for search engines to match your site to specific user queries. JSON-LD currently stands as the preferred implementation method for structured data. Unlike earlier formats that required complex HTML tag wrapping, JSON-LD is a script-based solution that resides comfortably within the head or body section of your document. Because it is a JavaScript object notation, it separates the raw data from the visual presentation layer, which simplifies maintenance for developers and content managers. For example, if you're marking up a product, you define the name, image, price, and review ratings within a cleanly formatted script block. This structure prevents the data from becoming tangled with your CSS styling or your layout logic. It also ensures that the search engine can parse the details even if the dynamic elements of your page load after the initial document request. Rich snippets are the direct visual objective of implementing this markup. When you correctly annotate an FAQ page, a recipe, or a local business, you gain additional SERP real estate that standard text results cannot match. This extra visual information, such as star ratings or collapsible lists, often lead to a higher click-through rate because the link appears more relevant and authoritative. Organization schema is particularly useful for establishing your brand identity, as it tells the search engine the official name, logo, and social profile links of your brand. Similarly, breadcrumb schema provides a clear pathway of the site hierarchy, which is vital for helping users navigate large structures. These small additions create a more professional appearance in the results page, effectively distinguishing your entry from competitors who lack such enrichment. Achieving error-free implementation requires iterative validation. Once you have defined your JSON-LD blocks, you should utilize dedicated schema validator tools to scan for syntax errors or missing required fields. These validators simulate how Googlebot will interpret your code, allowing you to catch issues before they affect your live search appearance. It is also important to map your structured data directly to human visible elements on the page. If your schema claims a price of $50, the user must be able to see that exact price on the rendered page, where you hazard being penalized for deceptive practices. Accuracy is the foundational requirement for long-term trust with search engines, as misaligned or intentionally misleading data will eventually lead to a removal from rich snippet eligibility. Modern search environments are increasingly shifting toward AI-driven results, where structured data plays a crucial role in answering user questions without a click. When an AI system synthesizes search results to answer a query, it draws heavily from the reliable, structured data points you have provided. By embedding explicit facts about your services or products, you make your content an essential source for these generative and predictive search experiences. You must continuously monitor your implementation through Search Console. The Enhancement Reports section will highlight potential warnings or errors that arise if your site structure changes or if Google updates its rendering requirements. Staying proactive by correcting these alerts prevents your business from losing its competitive edge in search visibility. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. Today we examine the technical evolution of the web, specifically how search engines prioritize mobile versions of websites for their indexing algorithms. Mobile-first indexing means Google primarily uses the mobile version of your website's content for indexing and ranking purposes. For years, the search engine crawled the desktop versions of sites, but the shift towards mobile-first behavior necessitated a fundamental change in how data is processed. If your mobile site contains less content than your desktop version, you risk losing visibility because the mobile version is your primary source of truth. You must ensure that all critical, crawlable, and indexable content is present on the mobile site. This includes the same metadata, such as titles and meta descriptions, which must be consistent across both versions. If you utilize a responsive design, this parity is often easier to achieve, but dynamic serving or separate mobile URLs require much stricter maintenance to ensure the mobile version does not lack features found on the desktop. Structured data is another critical component that demands absolute parity between your desktop and mobile environments. If your mobile site currently omits specific schema markup that the desktop site includes, you're likely failing to communicate the full context of your pages to the search engine crawlers. You should verify that all JSON LD snippets remain identical on the mobile view and that any conditional logic in your code does not inadvertently strip this data out for smaller displays. Furthermore, you should audit your mobile implementation for accessibility, ensuring that buttons, links, and forms are fully functional for touch input. Intrusive interstitials, such as large pop-ups that cover the main content, can negatively impact your ranking potential because they hurt the user experience on small screens. Testing your site against these requirements is best done using Google Search Console and the dedicated inspection tools provided by Google. Optimizing for the critical rendering path is essential when building for the mobile web, as mobile networks are often less stable and slower than fixed desktop connections. Delivering content instantly involves minimizing the size of your CSS, JavaScript, and HTML files, alongside implementing efficient caching strategies. By prioritizing the content that appears above the fold, you allow the browser to paint the essential parts of your page before loading non-essential background assets. Using adaptive images that serve different resolutions based on the viewport size ensures that mobile users do not waste bandwidth downloading assets intended for high-resolution desktop monitors. CSS media queries are your primary tool for ensuring that the layout remains legible and usable across the wide spectrum of device screen sizes available today. Consistency in functionality is the hallmark of a high-quality mobile site that satisfies both the user's intent and the engine's requirements. Regular auditing remains the most reliable defense against technical regressions that could destabilize your rankings. You should periodically perform crawl diagnostics using mobile-specific user agents to mimic how Googlebot sees your mobile site. Look specifically for errors that only appear on smaller screens, such as elements that might be unplayable or scripts that fail to fire due to memory limitations on mobile devices. Fast load times are not merely a preference. They're a direct requirement for maintaining a competitive edge in a mobile-centric search ecosystem. If a user encounters a broken experience, they will bounce, and high bounce rates serve as a negative signal to search engines regarding the quality of your page. Consistently verify your performance metrics using tools like PageSpeed Insights to ensure that your mobile configuration remains lean, functional, and perfectly aligned with your desktop messaging. I will see you in the next session. Welcome back to our technical exploration of how engine algorithms interpret site performance. In this lecture, we will examine how speed optimization directly influences your ability to maintain a competitive position in search results. Site speed is not merely a user experience metric, but a tangible ranking signal used by modern search engines to evaluate the quality of your infrastructure. When we talk about performance, we must look at the mechanical aspects of how a browser receives and renders your content. Minification is the first logical step, as it involves removing unnecessary characters, white space, and comment from your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files without changing their functionality. By reducing file size, you decrease the data throughput required for the initial render, which directly improves key metrics like the first contentful paint. Furthermore, browser caching serves as a powerful lever for repeat visitors by instructing local clients to store static assets, such as style sheets and images, for a defined duration. Once a visitor hits your page, subsequent navigation becomes near instant because the browser avoids redundant network requests. This efficiency contributes significantly to lower bounce rates, signaling to search engines that your site provides a high-quality, responsive experience. Latency remains a primary obstacle for global users, and the most effective solution for minimizing this delay is the deployment of a content delivery network. A CDN functions by distributing your content across a vast network of edge servers situated closer to the physical location of the end user. By serving assets from a regional node rather than a centralized origin server, you effectively reduce the RTT, or round-trip time, that a packet must travel across the wire. Beyond delivery, we must consider the processing power required on the back end, specifically regarding server-side rendering and database interactions. Inefficient queries, such as those missing indexes or performing heavy joins on large tables, can choke your site's response time during periods of high traffic. Regularly profiling these database operations allows you to identify bottlenecks that add unnecessary delay, often transforming a multi-second request into one that completes in milliseconds. The cumulative weight of third-party scripts often introduces hidden volatility that negatively impacts interactivity metrics like total blocking time. Any script that requires significant main thread execution prevents the browser from responding to user inputs, creating a frustrating experience that engines penalize. You should rigorously audit your dependency graph to remove unused code and defer the execution of non-essential scripts until after the page has become interactive. Furthermore, implementing gzip, or the more efficient Brotli compression, significantly reduces the payload size of the data transfer between your server and the browser. Modern web infrastructure also encourages the adoption of HTTP/3, which utilizes the QUIC protocol to improve multiplexing and connection stability. By moving away from older protocols, you reduce the overhead associated with head-of-line blocking, leading to a much smoother and more resilient delivery of your web content. Performance optimization is an iterative process that requires consistent benchmarking against your direct competitors to ensure you remain within the elite threshold. You should utilize tools that measure core vitals, focusing on how your site metrics deviate from the industry standard or the top ranking pages for your target keywords. If your competitors have faster load times, that gap represents a tangible disadvantage in the eyes of an automated crawler that favors speed and efficiency. When you systematically clean your code base, leverage distributed edge networks, and optimize your backend logic, your performance metrics improve in lockstep with your search visibility. Remember that every millisecond shaved off the load time is not just a technical victory, but a signal of reliability and competence. By maintaining this focus, you ensure that your infrastructure supports your content strategy rather than acting as a barrier to your growth. I look forward to our next discussion on architecture. Hello. In this section, we will examine the technical rigors of site migrations and how to manage URL redirections effectively to maintain domain authority. Site migrations are inherently risky because they involve changing the structural fabric of your digital identity. When you move content from one domain to another or modify your URL hierarchy, you are essentially asking search engines to reevaluate every page they previously indexed and trusted. If handled poorly, you risk losing years of cumulative organic traffic and the backlink equity that bolsters your rankings. The core objective of any migration is to ensure that both human users and search engine crawlers find the new location of your content immediately. This mapping process relies heavily on the 301 permanent redirect, which tells Google that a resource has moved permanently to a new address. Without these precise instructions, you leave crawlers to encounter 404 not found errors, which signals to the engine that the content is simply gone. A failed migration often results in a significant drop in organic reach that can take months of intensive cleanup to rectify. Therefore, your primary goal is to ensure that the transition is invisible to the search engines by preserving the link equity throughout the process. Managing protocol changes, such as moving from HTTP to HTTPS or migrating from one domain to another, requires a systematic approach to server-level configuration. While many content management systems offer plugin-based redirection, server-level redirects managed via your web server configuration files, like .taccess for Apache or Nginx configuration blocks, are strictly more efficient. These server-level rules trigger immediately upon the request reaching your server, avoiding the overhead of loading site resources or PHP scripts that might otherwise delay the response. You must also account for site consolidations, where multiple existing site architectures are merged into one. In these scenarios, you should always map legacy URLs to the most relevant, contextually similar pages on the new site rather than burying everything under the homepage. If a direct equivalent does not exist, redirecting to the closest parent category is preferable to sending all traffic to an orphan status. Precision in this mapping phase ensures you do not inadvertently trigger soft 404 errors, where the server returns a 200 OK code for a missing page, which confuses ranking algorithms considerably. Once you have deployed your changes, post-launch auditing becomes the most critical phase for long-term stability. You must monitor server logs and Search Console reports to identify any remaining 404 errors or redirection chains that you might have missed during the initial mapping. A redirection chain occurs when a user hits URL A, which redirects to URL B, which then redirects to URL C. Each extra hop introduces latency, wastes crawl budget, and can even trigger browser security warnings if deep redirect loops are established. You should audit your internal link structures as well to update all hard-coded links pointing to the old URLs directly to the new, permanent destinations. For inevitable errors, implement custom error pages that provide clear navigation paths, search boxes, or internal links to relevant content to keep users engaged. By actively managing these technical aspects, you mitigate the temporary, yet expected, ranking fluctuations that often accompany large-scale architectural updates. In the following technical session, we will shift our focus towards specific error resolution. See you in the next lecture. Welcome to this module on maintaining the technical integrity and security of your website. We will discuss how to identify and resolve underlying issues that prevent your pages from achieving their true ranking potential. Technical SEO is not a static task. It is an ongoing process of ensuring that search engine bots can effectively crawl, index, and render your content without encountering unnecessary friction. When a site suffers from technical flaws, such as broken links or improper server responses, you essentially communicate to search engines that the resource is not maintained, which degrades trust. A broken link, for instance, leads to a dead end that frustrates both users and crawlers, wasting the crawl budget that you should be allocating to your high-value pages. You should begin by performing a deep technical audit, typically using a tool like Screaming Frog, which allows you to simulate how a search engine bot perceives your architecture. During this process, you must particularly look for soft 404 errors, which occur when a page returns a success status code despite displaying an error message or non-existent content. These issues are insidious because they do not trigger standard server-side warnings. yet they provide zero utility to the end user and dilute your site quality profile. By methodically crawling your structure, you can generate a list of prioritized fixes that immediately improve the technical health of your domain. Security is an inseparable component of technical SEO, especially given that security signals now exert a direct influence on search rankings and user trust metrics. The most fundamental step in this area is the implementation of a strong SSL certificate to transition your site to HTTPS, ensuring that all data exchange is encrypted. While SSL is a baseline requirement, you must also look toward implementing robust security headers, such as Content Security Policy, CSP, and X-Content Type options, which provide an additional layer of protection against cross-site scripting and data injection attacks. Neglecting these aspects often leads to your site being compromised by malware, which can cause search engines to blacklist your domain and append a warning to your search results. Furthermore, you must remain diligent in your maintenance routine by regularly updating your CMS core and any third-party plugins. Many hackers exploit known vulnerabilities in outdated software to inject malicious scripts, so treat patch management as a critical defensive strategy rather than a trivial administrative chore. Content hygiene extends beyond simple security. It involves managing how your server handles duplicate content and resource rendering. When different variations of your URLs serve the same underlying content, you risk splitting your ranking signal among multiple versions of the same resource. To fix this, you must define your canonicalization strategy with precision, ensuring that the engine understands which specific version is the primary one that should appear in the search index. You should also audit your CSS and JavaScript files for potential rendering blocks using Google Search Console, as these resources often prevent bots from seeing the layout as it is intended to be seen by users. If a bot cannot parse these assets, it might interpret your page as thin content, or worse, ignore your layout entirely, causing the page to be indexed in a broken, non-functional state. Furthermore, clean up your content skeletons to ensure that you are not hosting low-value, thin pages that lack substance, as these contribute to a poor site-wide quality signal. By systematically addressing these rendering hurdles and consolidating your signals, you create a cleaner, more authoritative index of your actual business offering. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this chapter, we explore link metrics to ensure your authority-building efforts yield measurable results. To evaluate your backlink profile, you must first understand the abstraction provided by proprietary metrics like domain authority and trust flow. These scores act as proxies for the complex PageRank algorithm that search engines originally pioneered. While search engines themselves do not report a singular authority score, tools from vendors provide these values by aggregating crawl data to estimate the relative influence of a domain. Domain authority typically focuses on predictive ranking strength, while trust flow emphasizes the quality and distance of a source from trusted seeds. When you analyze a competitive landscape, these metrics help you filter out noise and focus on domains that carry legitimate reputational weight. You should treat these numbers as guideposts rather than absolute truths because a high score does not guarantee top positions for every query. Relying exclusively on these metrics can blind you to the underlying technical or content flaws that might be hindering your site performance. Consistency in your analysis prevents you from chasing vanity metrics that do not actually correlate with organic traffic growth. Distinguishing between high-quality editorial links and low-value spam is a fundamental skill for any practitioner. An editorial link is a voluntary, contextually relevant reference from a site owner who believes your content adds value to their readership. Conversely, automated spam links often appear on unmoderated platforms, low-effort directories, or link farms that exist solely for the purpose of passing link equity. When you audit your profile, look for indicators of intent. High-quality links are natural, embedded within relevant long-form content, and surrounded by meaningful editorial commentary. Spam links generally lack context and often originate from sites with no topical alignment to your core subject matter. You must also consider the frequency of these incoming links, which we refer to as link velocity, when evaluating the health of your site off-page strategy. A healthy site builds authority gradually through steady outreach, whereas artificial spikes often signal a manipulated campaign that could trigger algorithmic penalties. Identifying these patterns early allows you to maintain a clean profile that search engines prefer. The relevance of linking domains is just as important as the raw authority those domains possess. If your website focuses on software engineering, a link from a reputable technical publication holds significantly more weight than a link from a generic, disconnected retail site. This concept of topical authority suggests that search engines map relationships between entities and themes across the web. When your site receives links from authoritative sources within your niche, you strengthen your own semantic association with those specific topics. Conversely, obtaining a high volume of links from unrelated industries creates a disjointed profile that provides minimal contextual benefit. You should audit your potential linking opportunities by examining the primary content pillars of the prospective partner site. If the site covers topics completely tangential to yours, the effort to secure the link is likely better spent elsewhere. By hyper-focusing on niche-relevant authorities, you build a foundation that is mathematically and contextually coherent. Beyond the source of a link, you must understand the technical distinction between dofollow and nofollow attributes. By default, any hyperlink serves as a nod of validation, allowing link equity to flow from the source page to your site. The nofollow attribute was introduced as a mechanism to signal to crawlers that the link should not influence the ranking of the destination page. You will often encounter this on user-generated content, paid advertisements, or untrusted sources where the site owner wishes to remain neutral. While nofollow links do not pass the same direct ranking signal as dofollow links, they still contribute to traffic and brand visibility. It is a mistake to disregard nofollow links entirely, as a natural backlink profile usually contains a mix of both types. A profile consisting entirely of dofollow links can look artificial to automated review systems. You should aim for a distribution that mirrors typical patterns of organic reference within your industry. Link placement serves as a strong signal for how much intent and value is being transferred to your page. Text-based links that are embedded naturally within the body content of a web page carry the highest value because they suggest that the link is essential to the reader experience. Links buried in footers, sidebars, or generic blog roles are often viewed with skepticism by search engines as they frequently appear as site-wide automated injections. When you perform outreach, prioritize placements within the editorial body of a web page rather than standardized global templates. Furthermore, the surrounding text, often called anchor text, helps inform search engines about the specific relevance of your page. A well-placed link that feels truly integrated into the surrounding content serves as a high-fidelity signal of endorsement. Keeping your links meaningful and context-centric ensures your off-page profile remains resilient against future updates. I look forward to our next session. Hello, and let us turn our attention to the mechanics of link building outreach. This session focuses on the systematic methodologies used to acquire high-quality backlinks through strategic communication rather than mere happenstance. At the core of effective outreach lies personalization, stripped of all generic templates that search engines and webmasters have learned to identify as spam. You must approach each prospect by demonstrating that you have consumed their content and identified a specific, value-driven reason for your connection. A well-crafted pitch addresses the needs of the recipient first, positioning your link as a utility or an enhancement rather than a favor they are granting you. This often starts with the skyscraper technique, which involves identifying high-performing content in your niche, creating a more comprehensive or updated version, and reaching out to sites that already link to the inferior content. The logic is sound. If a site owner linked to a resource before, they're statistically more likely to link to a fresher, more authoritative resource on the same subject. beyond the skyscraper technique. You should be actively monitoring your brand mentions across the web to find instances where your name is used but not hyperlinked. It is a simple matter of reaching out to the author or editor, thanking them for the mention, and requesting that they transform that text into a clickable asset for their readers. Similarly, broken link building offers a pragmatic path to success by locating dead pages on relevant sites and offering your own relevant content as a functional replacement. This provides a direct service to the site owner by helping them clean up their technical debt, which creates an immediate incentive for them to provide you with a backlink. Both strategies rely on audit-first mindset, where you provide value by improving the structural integrity of the target domain. Building relationships with journalists and industry influencers requires a shift toward long-term PR-driven activity rather than transaction-oriented begging. You can facilitate this by designing linkable assets, such as original research based on your own internal data, infographics that simplify complex topics, or interactive tools that solve specific user problems. When you produce unique data, you transform yourself from a solicitor into a primary source, which makes you a valuable partner for journalists in need of evidence to support their narratives. Your outreach should emphasize the novelty or the objective utility of your assets, ensuring that human editors feel confident in citing your work. The goal is to build digital authority that attracts natural mentions because you have become a primary reference point for the industry at large. Ethical conduct during these outreach efforts is not a soft suggestion. It is a fundamental pillar of long-term domain health. You must strictly avoid black hat link schemes, such as participating in private blog networks or purchasing low-quality links that inevitably flag your site for manual actions. Search engine algorithms have become increasingly adept at identifying unnatural link patterns, and the short-term ranking gains from such methods are rarely worth the long-term risk of algorithmic penalization. Instead, focus on transparent communication and follow-up sequences that do not descend into harassment. A professional sequence includes an initial inquiry, followed by no more than 2 polite reminders spaced several days apart, ensuring your presence remains helpful rather than invasive. Maintaining professional standards throughout these interactions is how you cultivate a reputation that transcends individual link-building campaigns. When you treat the outreach process as a genuine professional networking exercise, you open doors to deeper collaborations that go beyond a single backlink. This might evolve into co-marketing efforts, recurring guest contributions, or invitations to participate in industry expert roundups. Consistency in your outreach effort, paired with the high quality of your linkable assets, will eventually turn your domain into a reliable source of information for your peers. Remember that every email you send reflects on your brand, so prioritize clarity, brevity, and mutual benefit above all else. I will leave you to process these outreach tactics before we move on to the next topic. Welcome to this module, where we will examine the health of your backlink profile and learn how to defend your site against potential algorithmic penalties. We will discuss auditing, disavowing, and maintaining link quality to ensure your site remains in good standing. Managing your backlink profile is not a one-time setup activity, but rather an ongoing duty that requires a disciplined approach. Even if you have never engaged in aggressive or black hat link building, your site can still accumulate toxic backlinks over time, either through automated bot activity or negative SEO attempts by competitors. An effective audit starts with exporting your full list of referring domains and analyzing them for suspicious patterns or extremely low-quality sources. You should look for sites that lack clear topical relevance, have high spam scores, or are hosted on domains that clearly exist only for the purpose of passing link equity. Categorizing these links allows you to distinguish between genuine, even if minor, editorial signals and purely malicious entries. Consistency in this process prevents the accumulation of technical debt, which can become significantly harder to remediate if left unaddressed for years. The Google Disavow tool is a surgical instrument that should be used with extreme caution to tell search engines to ignore specific links pointing to your property. Before you consider using this tool, you must understand that Google's current algorithms are generally quite good at ignoring low-quality links automatically. Misuse of the disavow file might accidentally negate high-quality signals that are helping your rankings, which is why it is usually reserved for cases of proven manual actions or extreme, intentional bad faith link spam. When you do create a disavow file, ensure it is formatted correctly as a simple text file with one URL or domain per line. You should document your reasoning for each entry, as this record is invaluable for future audits or in the unfortunate event that you need to request a reconsideration from Google. Always prioritize quality over quantity, and avoid the trap of disavowing moderately weak sites that are nonetheless safe and unobjectionable. Monitoring for sudden link loss requires a robust tracking system that alerts you when significant sources disappear from your backlink profile. A sudden drop in referring domains can indicate that your content is losing its perceived value, or it may suggest an issue with a third-party site, such as a major domain migration or a site being taken down. You should integrate link monitoring tools into your workflow to distinguish between a natural aging of links and a more systemic problem that requires intervention. When you notice a high-value link disappearing, reach out to the webmaster to verify if the deletion was intentional or a technical error. Proactive maintenance allows you to recover authority by identifying broken pages or accidental removals before they cause a noticeable ranking slide. Keep in mind that a stable link profile is one that shows steady, slow growth rather than erratic spikes or valleys. Diversifying your anchor text distribution is a critical component of maintaining a natural-looking link profile that satisfies modern algorithms. If every single link pointing to your site uses the exact same keyword-rich anchor text, it creates a footprint that is highly susceptible to the penguin update logic. You should aim for a healthy mix of branded anchor text, generic phrases, natural contextual sentences, and occasional long-tail variations. Over-optimization of anchor text is a common mistake that signals to search engines that the links were likely purchased or manufactured rather than earned naturally. Periodically review your anchor text distribution reports to ensure that your primary target keywords do not represent an overwhelming percentage of your profile compared to your brand name. A balanced anchor text profile mirrors the way users naturally reference websites in organic online conversations. Tracking the growth of referring domains and analyzing geographical or TLD distribution provides deeper insight into your site's reputation. If your business primarily serves a domestic market, seeing a massive influx of backlinks from irrelevant, unrelated countries with suspicious TLDs is a strong indicator of low-quality syndication. Analyzing the distribution of these domains helps you understand whether your outreach strategy is successfully targeting your core audience or if you're casting too wide a net in the wrong digital spaces. This geographic awareness ensures that you are building authority within the regions and niches where you actually operate, which increases the relevance of the link equity you receive. By observing these trends, you can pivot your outreach efforts to prioritize higher value sources that align with your site's target demographic. Google's stance on link building has evolved significantly, particularly with the refinement of algorithms that differentiate between helpful and manipulative patterns. The core philosophy remains that you should focus on building links that you would be comfortable showing to a manual reviewer at Google. Compliance with webmaster guidelines means creating content that is genuinely useful, thus attracting links that provide real value to users. Avoid any link exchange schemes or private blog networks that promise instant rank improvements through unnatural link velocity. By adhering to white hat practices and maintaining a clean, healthy profile, you shield your site from the risk of being penalized in future core updates. Transparency in your link building efforts is the best insurance policy for long-term survival in the search results. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this chapter, We explore how social presence and brand awareness influence your search engine rankings by driving visibility and trust. When we talk about the impact of social media on search engine rankings, it is often necessary to decouple correlation from causation. Search engine algorithms do not explicitly use the number of shares, likes, or tweets as a direct ranking factor in the same way they process an HTML meta tag or a canonical URL. However, the indirect influence of social channels is undeniable because these platforms act as the primary distribution network for your content. When you publish a high-quality article, social media is the mechanism that puts it in front of a human audience who might eventually link to that content. These natural backlinks, earned through visibility, are one of the most potent signals of authority an algorithm can interpret. Therefore, while a tweet does not immediately increment your site's ranking, the subsequent visits and inbound links certainly do. Treating social media as a top-of-the-funnel distribution engine effectively transforms social interaction into a proxy for the quality signals that search engines actually rank. Building consistent brand awareness creates a phenomenon known as branded search volume, which serves as a vital indicator of entity trust for search engines. When users regularly search for your brand name alongside specific industry terms, the search engine begins to associate your domain with authority in that topic. To nurture this, your social presence must go beyond simple link seeding and move toward meaningful audience interaction. Consistency ensures that your brand appears as a stable entity in the vast noise of the web, making it more likely that people will recall you when a problem arises that requires your solution. If you establish yourself as a helpful voice in a social community, you effectively shorten the customer journey from brand awareness to direct site referral. Monitoring these brand mentions, even when they do not contain a hyperlink URL, helps you understand the reach of your authority. Tools that aggregate these mentions provide actionable data on where your brand is being discussed, allowing you to participate in conversations that reinforce your position as a thought leader. The concept of social proof acts as a psychological catalyst that bridges the gap between a casual visitor and a loyal customer or a motivated linker. When potential visitors see that your content has been shared by recognized experts or has generated significant conversation, their trust in your domain increases significantly. You can actively influence this by encouraging user-generated content, such as reader reviews, testimonials, or community discussions that revolve around your offerings. By integrating social sharing buttons directly into your technical page structure, you reduce the friction between a reader consuming your content and them acting as an advocate for it. This ease of distribution is not just a convenience feature. It is an architectural decision that facilitates organic traffic flows. When you make it simple for a user to share a product page or an insightful guide on their own profile, you effectively broaden your reach without manual outreach. This ecosystem of social proof is essential for sustaining the visibility that search engines value because it confirms that your content exists within an active, human-centered network. Analyzing the correlation between high social activity and search visibility often reveals that the visibility is a byproduct of increased search volume. High-performing content on social channels frequently leads to more branded queries being typed in the search bar by users who saw the content, but only visited the site later through a manual search. This behavior tells the search engine that your entity is in high demand, which historically aligns with improved ranking performance across your primary keyword targets. Rather than viewing social media as a distinct silo, successful SEO practitioners treat it as the initial stage of a virtuous cycle. You publish, you distribute socially, you cultivate brand interest, and then you reap the rewards of increased organic search visibility as your domain authority grows. This feedback loop is what differentiates brands that dominate search results from those that rely solely on technical optimization. By maintaining this focus, you ensure that your SEO strategy is resilient against algorithm changes that prioritize user interest over pure technical manipulation. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this lecture, we will explore the mechanisms of local search visibility and the critical importance of business citations for regional dominance. Local search operates differently from organic search because it centers on the geographic intent of the user. When a potential customer queries for a service, Google calculates results based on three primary pillars: proximity, relevance, and prominence. Proximity measures how close your business is to the searcher, while relevance assesses how well your business category matches the user's need. Prominence is a measure of your business's standing in the physical world, often reinforced by digital signals like reviews and mentions. To influence these factors, you must maintain an optimized Google business profile that acts as the primary hub for your local data. This profile should be complete, featuring accurate business hours, descriptive service categories, and high-quality photography that showcases your establishment. You should view this profile not merely as a directory listing, but as an interactive landing page that feeds directly into the Google Map pack. One of the most persistent issues in local SEO is a lack of consistency in your name, address, and phone number, commonly referred to as NAP. If your business information appears differently across various directories, review sites, and your own website, you introduce ambiguity that causes Google to distrust your data. You must ensure that your NAP is identical everywhere, including the usage of specific formatting for address details, such as suite numbers or street suffixes. When you secure listings in high-quality local directories, you are effectively verifying your business identity and signaling your legitimacy to the search engine. These citations function as digital breadcrumbs that reinforce your location, making it easier for algorithms to confirm where you operate. Consistent data across reliable sources reduces the risk of being filtered out due to conflicting information, which is a frequent cause of poor local visibility. Beyond basic consistency, you need to implement local business schema markup on your website to provide search engines with machine-readable context. By embedding this JSON LD structure in your HTML, you explicitly inform Google about your operating hours, physical coordinate, and area served. This structured data significantly increases the chances of appearing in rich snippets, which provides more surface area for your business on the search results page. You should also consider the role of location-specific landing pages if your business serves multiple distinct regions or neighborhoods. Each of these pages should focus on topics relevant to that specific area, perhaps by discussing local events, community involvement, or region-specific challenges. This contextual relevance signals to search algorithms that you are truly embedded in that community rather than just servicing it remotely. Engaging with your local community also offers a powerful, often overlooked path to earning high-authority, hyperlocal backlinks. When you sponsor local events, contribute to neighborhood news, or partner with local organizations, you create opportunities for other regional entities to link to your site. These backlinks are highly coveted because they carry local relevance that generic links from large national publications lack. Furthermore, managing your review ecosystem is vital for improving your prominence score. You should encourage legitimate customer feedback, respond to both positive and negative reviews professionally, and use this content to demonstrate your commitment to service. Reviews are a direct signal to prospective customers and represent a major component of the local algorithmic ranking process, meaning they directly impact your position on the map. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this lecture, we examine how your brand earns external recognition through guest posting and digital PR to amplify your domain authority. Building authority through third-party platforms requires a mindset shift from simple link acquisition to strategic reputation management. When we talk about guest posting, we are not interested in the low-quality practice of placing generic articles on link farms for the sake of a backlink. Instead, the goal is to identify high-authority publications that your target audience actually trusts and respects. You must perform a rigorous audit of these sites by checking their domain rating, relevance to your niche, and their engagement levels. A placement on a site that has a high authority score, but absolutely no thematic relevance to your business, will provide negligible signal strength to search engines. Your strategy should focus on manual outreach to editors of established industry blogs, news outlets, and collaborative digital magazines that possess a genuine readership. Once you have identified your prospective partners, the focus shifts to the craft of writing content that acts as an asset for their platform. The biggest mistake novice content creators make is focusing their guest article on their own company or product, which immediately signals to editors that the piece is merely an advertisement. Your content must provide deep, actionable value to the host's audience through original research, unique case studies, or expert analysis that they cannot find elsewhere. If you help a host publication solve a complex problem for their readers, they become significantly more likely to accept your contribution. By consistently delivering high-quality, professional insights, you establish your own brand voice as an authoritative source of knowledge. This process transforms your brand from just another business into a reliable industry voice that top-tier editors actively seek to feature. Digital PR acts as the natural evolution of link building by leveraging genuine newsworthiness to secure coverage across major media outlets. Unlike standard guest blogging, digital PR involves creating data-backed announcements, industry surveys, or unique findings that journalists find compelling enough to report on. When your business publishes a report on emerging market trends or offers a fresh perspective on a current industry challenge, you provide the raw material that news outlets need for their stories. This approach yields high-authority backlinks naturally because the link is contextual to a journalist citing your research or data. It integrates into your broader marketing strategy by acting as a branding lever, ensuring that your company appears in the publications where your ideal customers consume news. Successful PR requires that you treat journalists as stakeholders rather than targets, meaning you must respect their time by ensuring your pitches are relevant and ready for publication. Securing placements on these top-tier domains is fundamentally a game of high-stakes pitching where brevity and relevance dictate your success rate. When approaching an editor, you should assume they receive hundreds of pitches daily and possess very little patience for generic templates. Personalization is not just adding the recipient's name to the email. It must include a specific reference to a previous piece they published and a clear explanation of how your contribution honors their ongoing editorial mandate. You must articulate the value proposition of your content within the first 3 lines of your pitch, demonstrating that you understand their audience's needs better than any other contributor. If you can provide them with a unique angle that benefits their readership, you bypass the barrier of them perceiving your outreach as spam. Mastery of this craft ensures that your brand gains visibility in premium domains, which signals to search engines that you are a credible entity worthy of page 1 rankings. Ultimately, all these efforts must converge to build brand equity alongside the technical authority that search engines prize. While the immediate goal is a backlink that helps improve your ranking, the secondary effect is the influx of referral traffic from users who are already interested in your industry topics. This traffic is often more qualified than organic search traffic because it arrives with the pre-existing trust of the publication that recommended you. By aligning your PR efforts with your seasonal product launches or key business milestones, you create a synchronized marketing impact that resonates far beyond a singular search algorithm. Continuous relationship management with editors and contributors ensures that your brand remains a recurring part of the industry conversation across multiple reputable platforms. When you view digital PR as a long-term investment in relationships rather than a discrete transaction, your backlink profile develops a natural and sustainable signal of quality and relevance. See you in the next lecture. Welcome to the final chapter of our course, where we synthesize everything we have learned into a sustainable model for long-term growth and strategic refinement. We will focus on turning static data into a living roadmap that ensures your search presence remains resilient against algorithm updates and shifting market landscapes. Achieving a high rank on the first page is not a destination, but a continuous state of maintenance and optimization. To sustain your position, you must treat your website as a dynamic entity that requires constant attention rather than a project you can simply launch and abandon. This involves a rigorous focus on key performance indicators, specifically organic sessions, keyword rankings, and conversion rates, which serve as the primary telemetry for your site's health. By leveraging Google Analytics 4, you can move beyond vanity metrics to understand how users interact with your content post-click. Simultaneously, Google Search Console provides the necessary raw data regarding crawl errors, indexing status, and click-through rates that directly impact your visibility. You should aim to centralize this data in custom dashboards that automate the monitoring of technical health and content performance, allowing you to identify anomalies before they become critical issues. When you look at these dashboards every week, you are essentially performing a pulse check on your digital infrastructure. This disciplined approach to data observation is what separates successful, long-term practitioners from those who rely on occasional, reactionary fixes. Building a robust SEO roadmap requires you to establish a regular cadence for both site audits and content refreshes. A site audit is not merely about finding broken links, although that is an important technical task, but about identifying structural weaknesses that might hinder future growth. I suggest adopting a quarterly review cycle where you reassess your core technical pillars, including page speed, mobile usability, and schema implementation, to ensure they align with the latest search engine standards. Alongside these audits, you must institutionalize a content refresh schedule, as search engines favor information that is timely, accurate, and comprehensive. Do not view content as a permanent artifact. Consider your existing articles as assets that decay in value over time as new information emerges or competitor content improves. By systematically updating legacy pages with fresh insights, new data, and improved internal links, you reinforce the authority of your domain. This process requires a shift in mindset toward iterative development, where each small change is evaluated for its impact on performance, mirroring the way software engineers manage technical debt and feature updates. The search landscape is currently undergoing a rapid transformation due to AI search developments and the rise of generative engines. Rather than viewing these changes as a threat to traditional search, you should consider them as an evolution of how users find and process information. Generative engine optimization requires you to focus on providing unique, human-centric insights that AI models can use as authoritative sources. If your content is merely a regurgitation of existing information, it will eventually lose relevance as AI summarizes these repetitive answers more efficiently. To stay competitive, you must cultivate a culture of testing within your team, where your SEO strategy is informed by controlled experiments and rigorous analysis of market shifts. This adaptability allows you to pivot when algorithmic volatility occurs, as it inevitably will. Maintaining a focus on ethical search guidelines ensures that your growth is not built on temporary loopholes that will leave you vulnerable when search engines refine their moderation systems. Your roadmap should be flexible enough to incorporate these new technologies without losing sight of the fundamentals: relevance, authority, and user experience. See you in our next session.